I was like, hold up, wait a minute. Did Brian Kelly just say that on national TV?
Welcome to Her Sports Convo with Ashleigh Wilson.
Hey y'all, welcome back. Crazy to see you here again. I hope you had a good week last week. I hope you have a good week this week. Holy macaroni, Shakespeare and Speroni. You guys, so much has happened. Well, before we even talk about, college football in the first week and all that good stuff that happened, you guys, if you're not following the Instagram, again, I say it every week, you're missing out because so much has happened. So much has happened. Step one, things that happened during this week, I've decided to start posting the podcast episodes on their own YouTube channel. So, you people who love to watch me talk to myself, or, when we have a guest, like to watch me talk to the guest, you can just see that all there and know that every single content you get over there is a podcast episode. And the content that you get on the Her Sports Convo channel is the things that I want to talk about in sports, like getting into the dirty details and the more contractual businessy sides of sports. So make sure you follow both. Subscribe everywhere. We got 2 channels for you to subscribe to now. Still need to be on the Instagram because you're missing out, because I announced that on Tuesday morning. Another thing that happened on Tuesday was Mr. J.R. Smith at the real J.R. Smith on Twitter, at Team Swish on Instagram, reposted the clip that I posted on Tuesday from last week's episode. I was not fine. I was not okay. I was almost injured, like literally, because I saw the notification, from Instagram. It's like, mention you in their story. And I just assumed it was like, how some people will make accounts that kind of use the same name as like the celebrity with the check. No. And so I was like, okay. It's just someone who's doing that. No. Was I wrong? It was the real J.R. Smith. And so I freaked out. And as I freaked out, I was walking down the steps beside the UNC student stores. If you ever been to our campus, those are some serious steps. And if you don't step on one, you're probably going to lose your life. And so I, almost died, but I caught myself. My athleticism caught me. My guardian angels were really looking out for me today, and they caught me as well. And I didn't die, but I almost did. So if by some reason you're here, hey, make sure you go listen to the whole episode where you heard I, threw you a bone and say you should come on, because you really should. I mean, we have a good time over here. Aside from all the drama that's happened in our, personal Her Sports Convo universe, college football. Oh my goodness, college football. It's been a first week. They really stuffed it all into week 1. And I have a feeling this week, we're going to call it this week. Week 2. How about we just call it week 2? So week 2 is going to be, I feel like it's going to be kind of boring because they stuffed all the drama into week 1. Where do we start at? Let's start at the top. We're going to start at the top, work our way down from most important to least important. I know you probably shouldn't do that. This is not going to do well in the retention, but I don't care. UCLA and LSU, Lord, let me tell you, I'm going to be straight up. If you happen to be a UCLA fan, when I saw that they were playing each other, I'm like, wow, UCLA really set themselves up for the okie doke. Little did I know it was LSU who was setting them own self up for the okie doke. I mean, like, the score was like 38-20. UCLA beat LSU, Ed Orgeron and the Tigers against UCLA. Like, UCLA. The Bruins, the team, the Bears, their mascot. I was so shocked. And I know UCLA beat Hawaii in their actual home opener, but like, it was like Hawaii, everyone was like, oh, they're obviously better than Hawaii, but they're not going to be LSU. I was one of those people, and Lord, was I wrong. By so much was I wrong. And they came out and they showed me and everyone else that UCLA is here to like make a stand. Like, at this point, I'm like, Pac-12 champion, UCLA? If you're not in the internet sphere, then what are you doing? 1. 2, did you see that Mr. Ed Orgeron, the coach for LSU, when he was coming into the stadium, he said, like, I'm ready for you, sissy blue shirt people. And the LSU TikTok social media team, they really took that and ran with it once they, beat them down into the ground real good. And did they not do that very well? They made a little came over shot where they were dancing after the game, put the score up there, put his soundbite up there, and they even changed their Twitter banner to Sissy Blue Shirts. Like, when I say that's a read, that was a read. And I mean, if it was me, I would definitely run with it. You have to run with it when you beat them in the fashion that you beat them. And as well, because they were, saying it with their chest puffed out. And little did they know, you have Mr. Joe Burrow is no more. I would even understand that if they said it last year when, Joe Burrow was just gone. But you had a bad season last year. So you thought, you know what I mean? Like you had a bad season last year. It wasn't like Joe Burrow just left and you didn't know how your team was going to be after Joe Burrow. Like, you saw what happened last year. You saw that y'all took it real hard. You did a straight nosedive, and you're just still going to make those comments. I don't think that was very smart on Ed Orgeron. But I mean, while we're here talking about LSU and their lackluster performances in the past few seasons and in week 1, I think Ed Orgeron got really lucky. He got Joe Burrow on the team. He had Jamar Chase. And all those guys, they blended well together. They played well that one year, and they won a national championship. I think he was a very lucky man to be in that position he was for LSU to win that national championship. He's not going to make it past 2023. If they have another season like they had in 2021, I don't think he's going to make it past this season. Because LSU, they got used to winning. They got used to having Joe Burrow and winning that national championship and running the SEC like they did for that 1 year. And even before that 1 year, they were competitive in the SEC. They were not competitive in that game against UCLA. Like, it was like UCLA was the SEC team and the LSU was the Pac-12 team that hasn't really performed well in the past years. It wasn't what people expected, and it wasn't what I personally knew. I know the LSU boosters were not happy about it. The ADs got so many phone calls when he went to work on Sunday, Monday, and or Tuesday, and now they're kind of just sitting around figuring it out. I'm not saying Ed Orgeron is a bad coach. I'm saying he might not be the right head coach in college football for a program like LSU. I think he would be more of a Midwest Big Ten kind of coach. Midwest Big Ten, not like, your Michigans. I mean, like you're under the radar, like Nebraska. Those kind of Big Ten teams. So, but his personality is way too big to be in the Big Ten because you have to be calm, mysterious. And Ed Orgeron is very far from calm and or mysterious. So I don't really know what's in the future for him. But yeah, I don't see him lasting long at LSU by any means. Since we're on the topic of coaches who got really lucky, made questionable decisions, we have to talk about Brian Kelly, the coach of Notre Dame. At the end of the Notre Dame-Florida State game that Notre Dame squeaked by their shining lucky coins, Brian Kelly made a statement that was around the way, something like, I believe in executing plans and I believe in execution, and maybe we need to execute some of our players. I was like, hold up, wait a minute. Did Brian Kelly just say that on national TV? Turns out it's a quote from an old coach back in the day. 9 times out of 9, you should not be using a quote that somebody used in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, probably even the 90s to describe culture today in 2021 because it's going to be offensive. It's not going to be right. It's going to be very rude. And that was very rude. That was borderline disrespectful. It wasn't even borderline disrespectful. It was disrespectful to say that on national television where you knew everyone was watching because it was on Sunday before Labor Day, which means the NFL wasn't on. Everyone was watching you and your kids almost lose to Florida State and not execute. Yes. But should he said they should be executed? No. And then 2, 3, I don't even think it was 2 hours later, max 2 hours later, Notre Dame came out with a statement. It was Coach Kelly is so sorry for his words, and he tried to quote this man, and it wasn't the right thing to do, and he apologizes so much for doing it. Everyone was like, okay, whatever. Like it wasn't right, but like most people moved on from it because that's how, one, the internet works, two, college football works. And so choose your words better, Brian Kelly, because you're already losing your hair. Like, because I know I couldn't have been the only person that noticed, like, that hair was thinning. Whatever happened in 2020 has rolled over into 2021, and his hair is probably thinning because he knew what his team looked like before they walked out of there against Florida State, and he was like, oh my gosh, we might lose to Florida State. And they were close to losing to Florida State. So maybe that's why his hair was thinning, because he knows like his team is not at the points where they were previous in their time, if that makes sense. I don't really think it does. Now, for the good thing that happened in that football game was definitely Mackenzie Milton coming out into the field, bringing Florida State back in the fourth quarter to give them a chance in the overtime until homie Mr. Kicker missed it after Mike Norvell called a timeout and iced his own kicker. It just wasn't good. Like, if you're a Florida State fan, why are you still a Florida State fan, especially when it comes to football? Now, if you're over there in basketball, like Lewis Hamilton, he's living his best life. He's getting players drafted top 10, top 15 every year. I understand the fandom for Florida State basketball, but for Florida State football, what are you doing to yourself? Why are you putting yourself through it? It's not worth it. Because I know like 18 people had strokes while watching that football game on Sunday, and it was not worth it. But if you're here for it, you're here for it. But Mackenzie Milton did such a great job. I mean, he went out there. We all thought he was done for when he had nerve damage and his leg was all different kinds of broken, and no one's ever came back from that. But he did such an amazing job. And I'm not going to lie, when I heard Mackenzie Milton was going to Florida State, I was like, Mackenzie, what are you doing? Did you forget that Florida State was Florida State? But I mean, he did his best. He led the team back. They were right there in it. And for some unfortunate circumstances, he didn't start, which I can understand why he didn't start, because they didn't think his leg would last 4 quarters. I mean, he had nerve damage in his leg. Like, it was brutal. And no one's ever came back from an injury like that. And especially for it to be his first season back, they didn't want to chance it. But if I was a coach after the second quarter and like we were literally shooting blanks, we had like 6 passes in the first half, I would have been like, okay, Mackenzie, you can't do any worse. Like, you can't do any worse. So the fact that they waited to the fourth quarter, that was their own fault. And I really do think if Mackenzie had 5 more minutes, Florida State would have won that game by 10 points. Florida State would have won that game by 10 points. 100%, no doubt about it. If he had 5 more minutes, Florida State would have won that game, and it would have been top story on the news. But unfortunately, he did not. And y'all were on the news because y'all were right there beside Brian Kelly saying, I should execute my players. So sometimes you can be the main headline like Brian Kelly was, and sometimes you can be a cliff note, which is Florida State, which I feel like Florida State definitely is a cliff note and have always been a cliff note. But as we know, Clemson lost, Washington lost, LSU lost, so many people lost. And I think the big overall theme for this first weekend definitely was your rankings aren't based upon you, it's based upon the team before you. And that was really seen in, as I said, like Clemson, homie couldn't score a point. And even Georgia, like no touchdowns in that game were offensive touchdowns. The touchdown that Georgia got was a pick 6, like within 5 minutes of the game or something like that. And then Clemson had the field goal, and then Georgia had another field goal. So it obviously in that game, definitely Georgia was the better team. They had the better up front. They had the better protection for JT Daniels. But I think in general, these football teams really need to evaluate themselves this week coming into week 2, which I don't think there's going to be a lot of big games in week 2, but I think they kind of start back up in week 3 and week 4, where they need to look at themselves and be like, we're not ranked, well, aside from Alabama, because, they went out there and they did Alabama things. So 2 through 25 really needs to look at themselves and be like, we weren't ranked this number because of us. We were ranked this number because of the people who were before us, and we should thank them for that, but also not rest on our morals and think that Jimbo Bob, who's across the field, is going to be afraid of us because we're ranked 7 or 9 or 15 or whatever, and they're just going to lay down and die for us. So that would be my biggest takeaway from this college football season. That, and that some people, especially you homies on the internet, some people just forget that it's week 1 in college football. Like, the teams that are playing on Labor Day weekend are obviously going to have the same name and have the same players. Well, some might not even have the same players, because some people definitely are going to lose their starting job after this first weekend. But they're relatively same players when it comes to week 12 and when it comes to the bowl season. But I also understand your drastic measures, because in college football, it's very known. You lose one game, you're playing in the Billy Bob and Mommy Sammy bowl game down there in Luke Water, Texas. Like, so I understand your dramatics and why, losing isn't good, especially when it comes to college football. And I think that someone really needs to evaluate that structure, which is why going to a 12-team playoff would be very important and crucial for college football. But we're not going to go down that road today, as it's, again, week 1. We have so many more weeks to go down that road when it comes to the college football playoffs. But yeah, some people were just like, fire this coach and fire that coach and take him out and do this and do that. And it's still week 1. Like, a lot of these guys for a lot of these teams either played like 3 games last season because of Miss Rona, or they just didn't play at all last season because they didn't want to get Rona, so they opted out, or they're freshmen and they haven't played college football ever. So a lot of things went into this week. Let's be patient with the kids. Let's be very patient with them and wish them the best. And hopefully, week 2 and on will be better for them. But I have not a lot of faith in what's going to come out of this college football season. It's wide open. It's very wide open. You have a few locks. But everything else, to me, I feel like it's very wide open. As you saw this past weekend, you had teams losing to FCS team. Not good. If you want to know the difference between FBS and FCS, make sure to check out the video I posted 2 weeks ago on the Her Sports Convo channel, and I talk all about that stuff. So if you want to go do that, make sure you do that and subscribe while you're there, because, as I always say, what are you doing? You're behind. UConn lost to Holy Cross, and their coach, after it was over, he was like, I'm going to retire at the end of the season. 2 days later, I'm going to retire today, and the defensive coordinator is going to take over. You know what I mean? Like, when you lose to Holy Cross, you really need to evaluate yourself. So I wonder why he stepped down so fast. And I feel bad for the kids. I mean, I would feel some kind of way if I lost to Holy Cross, and I'm supposed to be, well, they're not technically a Power 5, but Power 5 adjacent. You're in the FBS, so you should be beating FCS teams. And that just wasn't the case for a few teams this weekend. They lost to FCS teams. So shout out to those teams for getting their bag. And shout out to all these other teams who, were paid to go play these games at these other teams' stadium. And you won the game and you collected your paycheck. Round of applause for you and all that you've done for yourself. You're really doing big things out here, kids. If you're watching and or listening, because, I don't know how you're absorbing this form of content, then today is NFL kickoff. We're getting it started. Let's get it started in here, kids. You got Tom Brady and the Buccaneers playing Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Day 1, week 1. I'm excited for the NFL season. I think the gates are wide open. It's anyone's chance. I've pretty much watched almost every team's, building the team, getting them ready for 2021 season. I've almost watched every team. My all-time favorite are the Cleveland Browns building the team, even though they are not very consistent on posting their content. And when they don't have a good week or a good few weeks, they just stop making the show in general, which I think is very bad advertisement, a way to run your business. But that's a different conversation for a different day as well. I don't know who's going to win the Super Bowl, because, I don't even want to, give that person give that team, those players, like the automatic, okay, we're definitely not winning the Super Bowl this year. But I do think that the Bucs are going to have another good year. I think that if the Bears and the Eagles play themselves well and do what we all think is right by starting the right players and running the right schemes, that they could make a run in the playoffs as well. But I think I'm so sorry for every single Arizona Cardinals fan. I think the Arizona Cardinals might make a quite deep run this year. Like, I just have this feeling, you know what I mean? Like, they had a really good season last year, and that was before they had a preseason. That was before they had any of the things they got this season. And I think the Arizona Cardinals could be a team to watch out for. And they could, really make a run for it. Now, if you're a Steelers fan, I don't have a lot of gusto in the Steelers this year. I think they really had a shot in 2020 with, going undefeated and then losing in the first round. Sorry for my triggering any of you Steelers fan out there. But I think they kind of used a lot of gusto, and they gotta do too much this year to work around it. But hey, if they do it, and I'm wrong. But I don't think I am. But usually I am. So we never know. Guess you're gonna have to stick around and find out what happens. That's all I got. I'm putting my eggs in the Arizona Cardinals basket for they're going to have a deep run this season. Not necessarily cheering for them, because if you're new here, I'm very neutral when it comes to sports in general, especially professional sports. I've been scorned by the Carolina Panthers. I've been scorned by I don't think I've ever had an NBA team in front of me. I really did like the Celtics during like that Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Rajon Rondo phase. I know, don't come for me in the comments, please. Let's not talk about it. But after those players left and the team was banished by the Carolina Panthers and they blew up their whole system, I kind of was over it. So I've been neutral ever since. For any of you new people here, and let's go NFL. Somebody hit the Carrie Underwood Sunday Night Football on NBC. Oh gosh, am I going to leave that in there? I think I will. Well, that is all I have for this week. Make sure to like, comment, rate, subscribe wherever you decide to listen to your podcast at. Head on over to Instagram and follow at Her Sports Convo to be up to date with all things Her Sports Convo. Check out the Her Sports Convo YouTube channel, where I post new videos every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I talk about information in sports. What contracts does this mean? Things like why the NFL has divisions, how much practice squad players make, and just fun little things like that. And make sure to subscribe to this channel, like I already said, where I'll be posting new videos every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And they'll be your lovely podcast episodes where we talk about every single hot topic that goes on. If you're listening to the audio version, thank you for being here as well. Don't forget to rate. A lot of you aren't rating. I see you out there and you're not rating, or I hear you out there and you're not rating it. Also, come over to the YouTube channel too. You can watch and listen. You could be a double dipper. We love double dippers over here. We don't shame double dippers when it comes to Her Sports Convo. Be up to date. You learn everything before Thursday. If you're not on the Instagram. Shout out to all you guys that gave me so much love and so much comments last week on our 1-year anniversary. And as always, be safe, have fun, and don't be afraid to join the convo.